Must say, what a wonderful butler. He's so violent. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the one and the only City of Death, credited by David Agnew. However, he doesn't actually exist. The story was originally written by David Fisher. However, they had some trouble with the scripts, Graham Williams and Douglas Adams. So Douglas Adams actually completely rewrote the script, because they couldn't credit him. David Agnew's name appeared in the credits, and is directed by Michael Hayes. This story has the best ratings in terms of viewing figures for any episode of Doctor Who's history, especially part 4. Now, to clear up a misconception here, a lot of people say that the reason why it's rated so high is because it was just well written and well praised by the fan base. However, that's not true. I mean, even if you think about it, you can't really judge a story until after you watch it. So how can we judge a story? How can it be a viewing figures judge its story? It also aired around about the same time that ITV was on strike, and back in 1970s, there were only 3 channels, and because ITV was down, Doctor Who basically had half the television viewing figures back then. So that's why this story has so much high viewing figures and is the most highly viewed Doctor Who story in the show's history. It just so happened to also be the same time that one of the greatest written stories had ever come out for the series. This is my favourite Fourth Doctor adventure. It is absolutely hilarious, absolutely tense. Everything just clicks together, and I can't fault it at all. Everything just seems to work. And you know, if you don't like this story, that's completely fair. That's completely up to you. However, I haven't heard anyone mention one bad thing about City of Death. It just seems to be so popular with the fan bases, and I think one of the big reasons for that is that it's so well written. Douglas Adams, as you know, was the writer for The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and he used that humour and that sci-fi, heavy emphasis on sci-fi into this story. But let's delve back a bit. This is a 4-part adventure, and it sees the Doctor and Romana in Paris. And the first time Doctor Who did location footage for a story set outside of Britain. So they actually filmed this in Paris, and we actually get shots of the Eiffel Tower. So that's really cool. And the scenery just looks absolutely spotless. And it gives this story a much more higher budget. Another thing to note about this story, one word: music. Douglas Simpson has done majority of the Doctor Who music, the isolation music, for the majority of the Fourth Doctor stories, and it's coming up to the end of his era. But with this, for this story, for some reason, he decided to take it up a notch and gave us the run-in in the Paris track, which is probably one of the most memorable tracks in classic Who. I mean, every time I watch this story, or I just think about this story, that music that plays when the Doctor and Romana are walking around Paris just screams to me, and it's just so memorable. So I think he needs a great shout out in this story. And soon the Doctor takes Romana to the Louvre to see the Mona Lisa, because Romana talks about that computer images are better than people, and the Doctor disagrees. Earlier on, they also have an incident where they go to a cafe, and somebody's drawing Romana from behind, and when Romana turns away, the guy falls up the paper and in anger and throws it onto the floor. When they look at the painting, the drawing, it's Romana with a face of a clock, and it's a crack, to which the doctor mentions it's like a crack in time, and to which all of a sudden time seems to repeat as they basically relive the 5 seconds all over again, which is really bizarre. So this might be actually the first story in the crack in time story arc, which we'll be getting into way later on in the 11th Doctor's first season, but that's talking about way too ahead of us. And yeah, this cafe scene comes up a lot, and this is probably a great time to mention Michael Hayes directing. He's probably one of the best Doctor Who directors of the series, and this, I believe, is his last story. And it just feels completely different. It seems not only completely different to anything Doctor Who, but also it feels very Doctor Who. And I think the main part of that is its directing. Everything just seems just a bit more higher budget than any story around this time. It feels like we're watching a movie, and Michael Hayes really deserves props for his directing in this story. But I think it's also as well with the idea of going to Paris, it also influences what makes the Doctor so great, or at least why I like the Doctor. One of the elements that I like the Doctor so much, because a lot of writers and a lot of fans, they imagine this Doctor as this great superhero who goes around fighting monsters and defeating evil wherever he finds. But in this story, he's represented as just a traveller, and the reason why he goes to Paris isn't because of any mass conspiracy per se, but because he just loves adventure and he just loves exploring, and we see that a lot. In fact, most of the scenes in part 1 is just Romana and the Doctor walking around in Paris, talking and just having a laugh, showing a much more relaxed Doctor and relaxed Romana. So that just emphasises what makes the Doctor, why he wants to travel. He travels because he just loves seeing new things and living new experiences. And yeah, so that's one of the elements that makes this story so good. Another element that makes this story so good is the villain. The first episode starts with trillions of years before humans were born. In fact, any life, just before life on Earth has started, and we see a Jackroth trying to take a ship off, but his ship explodes. Now, in the modern day, we get introduced to, I believe his name is Count Skiliovsi, who is revealed to be Scaroth of the Jaggeroth. This creature, which you can see on the cover there, is this like green blob warrior race who's got this plan of stealing the Mona Lisa for reasons. Now, one reason why he's so good is the writing. He's such a charming guy, and every scene with him and the Doctor just nails on the head, and the humour on it is brilliant. But the other half that makes this character so good is the actor. Yes, he is played by the one and only Julian Glover. For those of you who don't know, Julian Glover is he's a really big actor. He was in Star Wars, he was in Game of Thrones, he was one of the villains of Indiana Jones. He's actually appeared in Doctor Who before, if some of you might remember. He played King Richard in the Massacre. No, it's not a Massacre. Oh, what's that one called? The Crusade. He played King Richard in The Crusade. Sorry, I don't know why it's gone really dark, but I'll just digress. And so what happens here then is there's this whole thing where the Doctor goes to show Romana the Mona Lisa, only when they're there, they get tracked down by a guy called Duggan. Now, Duggan is probably one of the best side characters in classic Who, hands down. He's just so charming, but he's also somebody who likes being head first, and he's usually the pawn to some of the Doctor's jokes. He just really works. There's something charming about him. Some of my favourite scenes include the Doctor and Duggan are talking to each other, and Romana's like doing something in the background, and the Doctor's just asking Duggan without even like looking at Romana. It's like, what's she doing? He seems terribly interested, and Duggan's like, I don't care. And there's a few scenes in which he just punches people to get his own way. And yeah, he comes out throughout the story, and he just, it just works really well. But also in the Louvre is this this woman who seems to be working with Count Sculio. I'm just going to call him Scaroth because that's his real name. This woman, she seems to be working with Scaroth, and she has a bracelet. And when the Doctor has a dizzy spell because another instance of a crack in time happened, he stole the bracelet because he realizes that it's not part of human technology. It's something far beyond the understanding of humans in 1979. So the Doctor's taking it, and Duggan follows him, and we get a brilliant scene in which the Doctor and Romana get to a cafe, and they're explaining and they're discussing everything, and then all of a sudden the Doctor's like, do you remember that guy who was following us? Yes. Well, he's standing behind me, pointing a gun to my back. Come on. Just the writing. It's just, Douglas Adams is all over this story. And sometimes, I will admit, Douglas Adams isn't always the best in Doctor Who. Again, sorry for that. 1 second, I'm going to turn the light on. There you go, is that better? Anyway. So, Douglas Adams isn't always the best writer for Doctor Who. Well, in terms of his script editing, a lot of times it does feel like he puts his humour before the story, especially when it's somebody else's story and they're trying to tell a much more serious storyline. I mean, just look at Destiny of the Daleks, the story prior. But here, everything just clicks. And we get a scene in which the Doctor's trying to work out what's going on. And he finds out that in Scaroth's house, there's a scientist that's been mucking around with time travel. He can do this thing where he can take an egg and turn it into a chicken and turn it into a skeleton, or he can take a skeleton and turn it back into a chicken and then turn it back into an egg. And whilst they're there, the Doctor, there's a lot going on. It's more, the story is mainly for its small humorous moments, and I could probably just go watch it. That's the only really justification I can say. Just go watch it. It's one of the best classic Who stories. But let's just delve into the story because I got to talk about this. So the Doctor discovers that there's a bricked up wall, or at least Romana discovers there's a bricked up wall, and when going through it, they learn that there are 6 other Mona Lisas, and Duggan knows 7 people that would buy the Mona Lisa if it was stolen. So the Doctor soon works out that that Scaroth is planning to steal the Mona Lisa so he can sell all these paintings, get in money for his time machine. However, how did Scaroth get all these paintings? How did he know they were there? After Duggan knocks Scaroth out because he discovers that the Doctor's found out, the Doctor goes back in time to meet Leonardo da Vinci, only Leonardo da Vinci isn't there. And one of the cliffhangers is actually the Doctor gets held up at sword point because he just broken into Leonardo's house, and he meets up with one of the guards, and it turns out the guard is Scaroth, And the doctor's like, what are you doing here? And Scaroth comes out, is like, I could ask you the same thing, Doctor. So he knows who the Doctor is, and yeah, the cliffhangers in this story are very well executed. Maybe the one in part 3 isn't so well, but it does emphasize the dangers of this villain. But I'll talk about that in a minute. So the Doctor then escapes and goes back into modern times and helps and finds out that Romana has been kidnapped again by Scaroth. Now, let's talk about Romana, because she's, as I've discussed throughout this marathon, she hasn't been the greatest companion. However, here she really comes into her own. Yeah, okay, like, she gets kidnapped twice in this story. She gets captured, she gets captured twice in this story. But she's always in demand. She's always authoriented. She's never petite or remorse. She's always standing up for herself. And that what really works. And it helps Romana be the companion she really should do. Lala Ward probably gives off her best performance in this story. This is Romana. This is Lala Ward's best performance in Doctor Who, period, in my opinion. And so she tries to work out how to give back Scaroth the time machine, because he doesn't realise that he's a Jaggeroth. So she helps her, trying to help him go back in time, not realising what he wants to do. But the Doctor understands what's going to happen. He finds out, he quickly learns that the reason why there's so why he's both in modern day Paris and in Leonardo da Vinci's The Renaissance times is because when his ship crashed, his body was actually atomized into the time vortex, scattering himself into 12 segments spanning throughout all of time. Which then begs the question, what happened to his other selves? Maybe there are some missing stories in which the Doctor tracks down and has battle with other versions. I would love to have seen Julian Glover return to play those roles. I have a fan theory that one of those faces is actually King Richard. Yes, the first Doctor actually encountered one of Scaroth's selves, and he challenged the first Doctor, not realising that they are probably the same person. It also makes a great foil for the Doctor, as the Doctor's a Time Lord and he can regenerate 12 times, and Scaroth is somebody who's 12 different people scattered throughout time, all apart, but none of them complete. And so what Scaroth plans to do is to go back in time, stop himself from taking off and destroying his ship and reverting all of history. And Romana thinks that's okay, and she tries to help him for a bit. And he helps her. She helps him, and before the Doctor gets in, and they get put away. And before they could escape, Scaroth goes back in time. So the Doctor has to use the TARDIS to travel back to where Scaroth is, and basically stop him from stopping himself. Because the Doctor soon realises that the ship will explode, giving off a mass radiation, which will actually kickstart life on Earth, creating humanity. Or at least life on Earth just in general. So that's makes this story very high stakes. And it's also here when the Doctor goes into the TARDIS, do we get a cameo by John Cleese, none less, most known for the Mighty Python group. So that's really cool that he has a very small cameo in this story. So they go back in time, and Scaroth is just shouting, "Come, stop now, for the sake of our people." And what does Duggan do? Punches him square in the face. That bit is so satisfying. And the Doctor says something along the lines of, Duggan, you might have probably punch, the greatest punch in history, the most important punch in history. Just the dialogue in this story throughout the board is just absolutely memorable. And so because Romana put a device into his time machine that makes him have to return back to Paris in modern day, after I think she said it was 12 minutes. So he goes back into modern day, and his servant actually sees him with his mask off, and he throws something at the time machine, exploding it, killing him, ending the city of death. We also get a short scene in which the Doctor and Romana talk to Duggan about where they're going and where they're from, and that the Doctor doesn't know, and they say their goodbyes, and we get one of probably the most iconic endings to a Doctor Who story, in which, from the angle of the Eiffel Tower, Duggan's looking down, and we see the Doctor and Romana walk off, and they turn around, and the Doctor goes, "Bye bye, Duggan." And yeah, Duggan really should just return, because he's just such a fantastic and interesting character, and I just love his interactions with both Romana and the Doctor, and I would love to see him return in New Who. I think him and Jodie Whittaker would have been a great fun to watch. And so there you go. That's the City of Death. Overall, it is my favourite story for my favourite Doctor, which is Tom Baker. It's well written, it's witty, it's funny, it's also intense. It's also a brilliant thriller. It's got some great moments. Romana's probably at her best in a story. Duggan is easily one of the best side characters to any Doctor Who story, mainly the classic era. And Scaroth is just a fantastic one-off villain. And I really wish he would have returned. There's not really much more to say about City of Death. I mean, it's one of those stories that everybody's praised. I don't think I've added anything new to the discussion, but for the marathon, I had to talk about it, so there you go. So join me next time where K9 returns, because he's been off for a bit because he wasn't in this story, and he only had like a cameo appearance in Destiny of the Daleks. And the Doctor and Romana land on a strange planet and fight a really giant, I think it's a plant thing. So join me next time for The Creature in the Pit. See you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra.